The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, also called the North Atlantic Alliance, is an intergovernmental military alliance based on the North Atlantic Treaty, which was signed on the 4th of April 1949. The NATO headquarters are in Brussels, Belgium, and the organization constitutes a system of collective defense whereby its member states are agreed to mutual defense in response to an attack by any external party. We have seen earlier that 21 of the member states are part of NATO. Now, NATO is a military organization that exists to put together all the member states in the European Union to work together, having its headquarters situated in Brussels, in Belgium. So we see that this military alliance will become very important. We know that the Antichrist will rule the nations through a mighty hand, as Yeshua had revealed to us, making use of the military powers of the world. So we see that if he comes out of the European Union, he will definitely take control of the NATO forces, and he will become their ruler and king. In an article on the 17th of April 2007, it actually mentions that NATO will become a worldwide military alliance, a force to be reckoned with. In the article it says NATO has been transforming from its Cold War and then regional incarnation of the 1990s into a transatlantic institution with global missions, a global reach, and global partners. This transformation is most evident in Afghanistan, where NATO is at work. But the line we've crossed is that in areas or out area debate that cost so much time of debate in the 1990s is effectively over. There is no in areas or out areas anymore. Anything or everything is NATO's areas potentially. That doesn't mean it's a global organization. It's a transatlantic organization, but Article 5 now has global implications. NATO is in the process of developing the capabilities and the political horizons to deal with problems and contingencies around the world, and that is a huge change. According to Daniel Fried, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State of European and Eurasian Affairs. So we see that NATO is truly expanding its borders by including partners that are transatlantic, not only situated in Europe itself. So we see that suddenly the European Union is becoming an umbrella for all other military forces to be able to come under one banner. We also see that their explicit purpose for doing it is saying that they want to be able to deal with problems or contingencies around the world. In the same article, it also says that they want to be prepared to be able to deal with anything coming from the East. And we will see in the rest of this seminar how Yeshua had revealed to us how the East will be removed and will actually, because of a mighty war, will be completely incinerated in a moment. Now we can understand how the Antichrist will rule from this position in the world. When we look at the relationship between the European Union membership and the NATO membership, we can see that most of Europe is part of the part of both. They are part of NATO as well as the European Union. Only countries like Turkey, and we can also see Sweden, have only been part of NATO and have not been part of the European Union. And then we can see how Norway and other countries have only been part of the European Union. This is very important to also see when we look at the rest of the seminar and how 3 horns have to be removed. When we even further look at NATO partnership, we can see another very important relationship which now become very evident in these last days, as Yeshua had revealed to us. We see that NATO members are across the Atlantic Ocean, where North America and most of Canada is part of the European Union's NATO partnership. We can also see that Russia is called a partnership for peace country. It means they are not necessarily part, but they are in peace with the European Union. And then we see what is called the Mediterranean dialogue countries. These are countries that they have been in dialogue with to become part of the NATO partnership. And we especially see that there is Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, and other North African countries have been part of the dialogue countries to become part of NATO. And we'll now see in the rest of this seminar to follow how these countries that are in dialogue and those countries that are only part of NATO and not part of the European Union, how they have become a problem to those who desire the whole world to be united under one banner. And what they now would do, according to fulfilled prophecy, just as Daniel and John had prophesied would have to happen, how 3 of the first horns would have to be removed. The September 11 attacks caused NATO to invoke Article 5 of the NATO Charter for the first time in its history. The article says that an attack on any member shall be considered an attack on all. The invocation was confirmed on the 4th of October 2001 when NATO determined that the attacks were indeed eligible under the terms of the North Atlantic Treaty. The 8th official action taken by NATO in response to the attacks included Operation Eagle Assist and Operation Active Endeavour. Operation Active Endeavour is a naval operation in the Mediterranean Sea and is designed to prevent the movement of terrorists or weapons of mass destruction, as well as to enhance the security of shipping in general. And it began in the 4th of October 2001. From the moment that the attack took place in America with the fall of the Twin Towers, we see that NATO kicked in its Article 5, which basically says that a member of one of the states is a member and is an enemy against all of them. Therefore, basically we have a united war that now starts, combining the United States power and the NATO forces together, the United Nations as well as the NATO forces together, in order to make war against any man or any person or any organization that would not want to submit themselves to the United Nations treaty and the proclamation that they have made. So we see that this start of the fall of the Twin Towers began the uniting between the United Nations forces and the NATO forces, saying that an enemy on one of the members is considered an attack on all of the members. This truly is the beginning of World War III. And we can see how it's been building up and building up over the last 10 years. But many might ask, what does this have to do with the fulfillment of prophecy? Why are we looking in this much detail into the relationship between the European Union and the NATO forces? We see that there has been a build-up of nations and countries starting to form a unit and become a union to work together under one leadership, with one government, one monetary system. But how could the European Union, and many have wondered, how would the European Union become such a leader in the world? In order to fulfill prophecy, we have seen that the scriptures told us that 3 of the first horns need to be removed. But where is these nations, and how will we ever be able to identify them, is the question. What many do not know is that there was another proposal that followed up on the European Union, which was called the Mediterranean Union. And what Yeshua had revealed to us very recently is how the Mediterranean Union is the answer to understanding how prophecy will be fulfilled. It says the Mediterranean Union, officially known by the full name of the Barcelona Process, Union for the Mediterranean, and previously known as the Mediterranean Union, is a community initiative initiated on the 30th of July 2008 by French President Nicolas Sarkozy. It is a new formulation of the existing, since 1995, Europe-Mediterranean Partnership, also known as the Barcelona Process. The Act unites all EU members with several non-EU countries that border the Mediterranean Sea. The headquarters of the Union for the Mediterranean are located in Barcelona, Spain. So what we see is that the now current president of France have made an proposal that there should not be only a European Union but a Mediterranean Union. And later what happened was this Mediterranean Union, which sounded like there was a union of all the nations working together, the name was changed so that it became known as the Union of the Mediterranean. But really, what they are trying to hide is they are trying to unite not only the European Union countries, but all the nations around the perimeter of the Mediterranean Sea. And now we'll start to understand what is currently happening in the world. We'll show you how Yeshua had shown us through signs in the heavens how 3 had to be removed, which 3 has to be removed, and why those 3 countries have to be removed before the Antichrist can take his position. On the 4th of April 2002, during the day, I asked the Lord about the plans of espionage and the travel plans of the Antichrist, his war strategies and attacks which he will orchestrate in his attempt to rule the whole world. Then signs started appearing to me in the heavens, and Yeshua started to answer the prayer that I have asked him to give me understanding regards the plans of espionage and the war strategies in order for the Antichrist to come into his position. The sign that I saw a large sign of a 3 that appeared in the heavens. We know that we have seen already that the Prince of the Covenant, which is the long horn, made an agreement with many nations which lasted for 1 week or 7 years. And here we have a large 3 which indicates around the middle of the 7 years. So God is actually dividing the 7 years into 2 parts. So I saw a large tree that appeared in the heavens. Then I also saw after this a sign of the ceasing of the sacrifices. Now we will see in a moment, and also in the seminar to come, what the ceasing of the sacrifices actually represents, and how prophecy again on 3 different levels have been fulfilled and will now finally be fulfilled. So the sacrifices were ceased, and just after the sacrifices were ceased, I saw that he arose in the temple of God, saying that he is God. And I saw a sign of one who cast out the sacrifices, ceasing them from being made. We will see that these sacrifices did not only stop in the middle of the 7-year covenant, but actually the sacrifices were stopped in the beginning of the 7-year covenant. And 3.5 years later, they were completely being forbidden to be made at all anymore. Then the Lord showed me how the Antichrist strategically would execute people that still were blocking him from coming to the position of world rulership. We have already seen that President Obama has made a 7-year treaty or a nuclear covenant starting on the 14th of April 2010. And that was the ceasing of the sacrifices, the stopping and the searching for nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons material in order to prevent rogue nations or terrorists from being able to get these material to manufacture weapons of mass destruction. Yeshua reveals that just after the sacrifices were ceased, the Antichrist would start to strategically execute people or remove countries. What we know from prophecy is that 3 of the first horns need to be removed. And now we will break open and reveal how prophecy has started to fulfill since the beginning of 2011, removing the first 3 horns. Later that afternoon, I also saw a squid that turned on the nations of Algeria and Libya in North Africa. Then through other signs, I saw how he had 2 who were riding on a camel sitting in North America in the area of Egypt and Libya, or I said Algeria and Libya, but actually if you look at the picture and sign we'll just show you now, we'll see how it was actually in the area of more Egypt and Libya, how 2 were executed. What we saw late on the afternoon of the 14th of April 2002 was the map of the Mediterranean Sea, and especially that part of Egypt and Libya and Israel all coming together. And we saw 2 men sitting on 1 camel in North Africa, and we saw how strategically bombs were being dropped on this area. What I never saw, and only saw in 2011 after understanding all the prophecies, is that Yeshua had shown me that there would be 3 bombs that would be dropped. 3 small bombs, and then there would be 1 large bomb, which is a nuclear bomb. The 3 bombs, 2 of them were dropped on the area of Egypt and Libya, and 1 was dropped on the area of Lebanon and Syria. And we see how 1 large bomb is dropped in Israel. Yeshua had revealed to us how this squid, who is a symbol of the Antichrist, would remove or execute or subdue the nations of Algeria and Libya and Egypt and Lebanon and Syria in order to rise to his position. We see how exactly 3 bombs, being 3 horns, that need to be removed in that area. On the next day, on the 5th of April 2002, even more signs started appearing, explaining the very sequence of the events of those things that would happen from the beginning of the 7-year covenant. Of those things that God had been showing us in the last 2 days, also explaining their interpretation and understanding. We saw a sign of a short king and a tall queen that appeared in the southwest towards South America. The queen was begging this king to have mercy on the one in the north. And I saw her hanging on the edge of the garment of the one whom she seemed to worship, asking him for mercy, begging that he would not execute this one in the north. For the one who shot out of the holster was called to a round table meeting at the headquarters in Europe. Then I heard the word freak accident. God revealed to me that they were planning to pull the plug on him because he had messed up. They were looking for a scapegoat in order to blame all that had happened on him. His head was about to roll. And after this I saw another sign that appeared also in Europe. I saw 2 men, one tall and the other short, that appeared in the northwest, in Switzerland or in Brussels. The older one, which looked like the shorter one, was stout and wore a monocle. He seemed to be the big boss or the heart of the organization. And I heard him speak with a deep and a horsey voice, sounding like this. Brr, 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 brr. Like a large bullfrog. He also had eyes like a blowfly, according to what YHWH showed me. I saw him walking and having a cane in his hand, and he smoked a cigar, even while he spoke to those in the meeting. Later, as I spoke to my brother, who was also fasting with me at that time, telling him about all the signs that I had seen, he immediately interpreted and understood who this person actually is who wore the monocle, saying that he sounds just like Henry Kissinger. So YHWH started to reveal through these signs and through the anointing how the plans of espionage would play off in order for the organization to be able to bring into place in the headquarters, which is Europe, which we have already seen where the Antichrist will come from, and how this big boss, who's the heart of the organization, who is Henry Kissinger, will all work together in order to bring the final fulfillment of prophecy into place. Kissinger left the office when a Democrat or a former governor of Georgia and Washington outsider Jimmy Carter defeated Republican Gerald Ford in the 1976 presidential elections. Kissinger continued to participate in policy groups such as the Trilateral Commission and to maintain political consulting, speaking and writing engagements. We see that Henry Kissinger, whom YHWH had shown us earlier, we told you that he had shown us the leader of the organization who was a bullfrog or a blowfly, and how YHWH had compared him, because of his bulging eyes, to be the leader of the organization, being the bullfrog or the blowfly. He, at that time, Kissinger has been a security and defense minister and has been an advisor to 4 presidents of the United States. But at the time when Jimmy Carter defeated Gerald Ford, he left the office. But he continued to work in what they call policy groups, which is called such as the Trilateral Commission, and he was doing political consulting and speaking and had some writing engagements. Kissinger is a brilliant and a mastermind. Even when he was still doing his military training, he was recognized in those days for his amazing ability of strategy, and he was quickly raised up and taken in order to be used for that purpose. Kissinger later became part of the intelligence, and from there had risen up to become the security advisor and defense advisor for 4 presidents. In 2002, President George W. Bush appointed Kissinger to chair a committee to investigate the terrorist attacks on September 11. Kissinger stepped down as chairman on December 13, 2002, rather than reveal his client list when queried about potential conflicts of interest. We see, although he had stepped down and has resigned from the important position, he was often counted on by different presidents, and here President George W. Bush called him in to help investigate the so-called terrorist attacks on September 11. But the very fact that he stepped down, not willing to reveal his client list, shows that he was dealing with information that he did not want to reveal to the public and to those who could bring him in disrepute. In 2006, it was reported in the book State of the Nile by Bob Woodward that Kissinger was meeting regularly with President George W. Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney to offer advice on the Iraq War. We can see that he was the mastermind and the one who had helped with the strategizing behind the scenes of the Iraq War. And also in April the 3rd, 2008, Peter Robinson of the Hoover Institution, Kissinger reiterated that even though he supported the 2003 invasion of Iraq, he thought that the Bush administration rested too much of the case of war on Saddam Hussein, supposed weapons of mass destruction. We see here that he truly would have attacked faster and thought that Bush, whom Yeshua had already considered as a warmonger, actually would have attacked faster and more gruesome. Robinson noted that Kissinger had criticized the administration for invading with too few troops, for disbanding the Iraqi army, and for mishandling relations with certain allies. He truly is the mastermind and coordinator, and the bullfrog, or the eye-hawk, being the coordinator of the wars, being a symbol of Kissinger, who sits behind the scenes working through secret societies in order to achieve the goals of the so-called system or secret society of the Illuminati. Henry Kissinger was involved in many different things throughout his lifetime as the Secretary of State of both Nixon and the Ford administrations. He was part of what they call a covert organization. Covert organizations are intelligence organizations that behind the scenes through the US government put in place certain systems and certain political agendas in order to achieve their goals. One of those operations or covert operations that he was part of was called Operation Condor. In an article about Operation Condor, it says that Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State in the Nixon and Ford administrations, was closely involved diplomatically with the Southern Cone governments at the time and well aware of the Condor plan. According to the French newspaper L'Humanité, the first cooperation agreements were signed between the CIA and the anti-Castro groups or the fascist movements such as the AAA, set up in Argentina by Juan Perón and Isabel Martinez de Perón's personal secretary, José López Rega, and Adolfo Almirón, arrested in Spain in 2006. So he was part of a Operation Condor and worked closely with the CIA and the anti-Castro groups working against fascist movements in Argentina. Operation Condor was a campaign of political recession or repression involving assassination and intelligence operations officially implemented in 1975 by the right-wing dictatorships of the Southern Cone of South America. The program aimed to eradicate alleged socialist and communist influence and ideas and to control active or potential opposition movements against the participating governments. We see that this Operation Condor was a intelligence operation which involved the assassination and intelligence gathering in the country of South America, trying to overthrow so-called governments that were tending towards fascist and communist or social influences. We see here that he, as a mastermind, have been sitting behind organizations that have caused the assassination and the removal of those whom they considered a threat, whom they did not want in control or in rulership. Due to its candleline nature, the precise number of deaths directly attributable to Operation Condor is highly disputed. But it is estimated that a minimum of 60,000 deaths can be attributed to Condor, and even possibly more. Condor's key members were the governments of Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Brazil. The United States participated in a supervisory capacity, with Ecuador and Peru joining later in more spherical roles. We see that the United States, having Henry Kissinger as their Secretary of State, was in the supervisory capacity. According to all that I could find, all those who were involved in Operation Condor were found guilty of crimes against humanity, having killed over 60,000 people in this operation in order just to overthrow a government, killing people and assassinating people in key positions so that they would not be able to rise to power. But Henry Kissinger walked out of there smelling like roses. He was completely protected behind the scenes. No one put a hand to him. No one even touched him. On the 31st of May 2001, French judge Roger Leloir requested a summons served on Kissinger while he was staying at the Ritz Hotel in Paris. lawyer wanted to question Kissinger for alleged US involvement in Operation Condor, which was amidst 1970 campaign of kidnapping and murder coordinated among the intelligence and security services of Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Paraguay and Uruguay, as well as the death of 5 French nationals under the Chilean junta. Kissinger fled Paris that evening, and lawyers' inquiry were directed to the US State Department. If Kissinger was not guilty, why did he flee that evening? Because he knew that he would never have been able to escape or be able to prove himself as innocent. Simultaneously, Spanish judge Baltasar Garzón, who had engaged in a failed attempt to get Pichot extradited from the United Kingdom for questioning, requested that Interpol detain Kissinger for questioning. But British authorities refused his request. We see that the powers behind this man are far greater than we can even imagine. Not even the United States of America State Department would allow him to be questioned. Not even the British authorities would allow him to be extradited and to be detained for questioning. When we look at the organizations that Kissinger has been a member of, we see that he is part of the Bohemian Grove, which is a group of very influential men, or the most influential men, economic, powerful, strong businessmen in the United States of America, meeting with presidents, discussing the way forward. A so-called think tank. But those who have been able to penetrate and find out what happens inside of the Bohemian Grove would find out it's a breakaway place for the presidents and for the most influential people in the world. But in reality, behind the scenes is a place where they also break away completely from their own lives. Once caught on video, the presidents were found worshipping and being part of a ritual worshipping the Mother Goddess. In a press release issued on the 45th Munich Conference on Security Policy on Friday the 8th, 2009, he declared that Kissinger, his voice continues to bear weight and authority throughout the globe. We see that he is a very powerful and influential man, now working behind the scenes, identified by Yeshua as the heart of the Illuminati. He is also part of the Council of Foreign Relations, having had great impact in the world between nations like China, and was involved also at the time when the Hiroshima nuclear bomb was dropped on the Vietnamese. He's also part of the Aspen Institute, and then he's also part of the Bilderberg Group, which is a club of 300 people in the whole world who come together to discuss how the West, if I can say that, or how the Illuminati and the power and the monetary systems will cause the rise and fall of countries, will bring about recessions, and even cause wars if that is necessary in order to restore their position. Through these signs that Yeshua had shown us, we will now see how prophecy are being fulfilled right in front of our eyes. It was revealed to Daniel that the long horn, which we have seen as Alexander the Great, would be broken off, and in his place would arise 4 horns. And then 3 of the horns would be removed, And the little horn would become a horn that would extend his power across all the other nations of the world, becoming the Antichrist. In Daniel 8 verse 9 it says, out of the littleness and small beginnings of one of them came forth a horn, whose impious presumption and pride grew exceedingly great towards the south and towards the east and towards the ornament, the precious or the blessed land of Israel. We know that Alexander's kingdom was divided into four towards the four winds. Towards the south being the Seleucid Empire where Egypt is, and towards the east, towards the area where we today know where Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan and India and Iran actually is situated. And then also he says towards the ornament or towards the blessed land of Israel. We know that Israel is also bordering the Mediterranean Sea. In order for the Mediterranean Union to be able to come into its position, three of these horns must first be removed. We've also seen how the Vandals, the Heruli and the Ostrogoths also had to be removed before the Holy Roman Empire could take its full power and come to its full power at that time in history. What is so awesome and amazing about these prophecies is that both Alexander, in Alexander's time, and how his four generals divided the kingdom, and out of Macedon came Antiochus Epiphanes out of the west, which today is known as the area of Greece. In the same area, also coming out of the west, in the time of the Roman Empire, came a little horn, which was Constantine, who had both political as well as religious power, controlling the nations of that time, and had to remove the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, and the Heruli, which were in the exact same area that the three generals of Alexander the Great's areas had to first be removed. We see that the very areas of Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia, situated in the south, is the very areas that had to be removed. We also see that the areas of Lebanon and Syria is situated towards the east, and right now have become a great problem and are being overthrown as we speak. And then also towards the north, towards the area of Turkey, we know that that kingdom also had to be subdued. The area which we know today as Turkey, which was in that time the area of Pergamon. So three horns are being removed even as we speak. And now we can understand how the Roman Empire, the very borders of the Mediterranean Union, are the very same borders of the ancient Roman Empire. But this Mediterranean Union cannot come to its position and take its full power until those who are in opposition to the Mediterranean Union are not removed. And we know those who are in opposition, they are basically the Muslim nations and Israel. So Yeshua had revealed through these signs of how Egypt and Libya and Syria and Lebanon would be removed through wars before the middle of the three-year covenant or the 7-year covenant is broken. But we will see now in the rest of the seminar how Israel, being a big problem to the European Union and to the one world government, would have to be removed in order for them to rise to the full power of the extent of the beast, and the Antichrist taking his position as the ruler over the whole world.